My name is Dirk Anderson, and I'm hoping to be your next county auditor. I grew up in the Midwest, a county very much like this, except for Logan, and this area is much bigger than where I grew up. I grew up in a town of about 5,000 people. How many of you have baled hay? Okay, I've done that. Now I'm hoping to get you on this one. How many of you have detasseled corn? Okay, let's talk later. You get a chocolate, okay? That is not fun. Okay, very messy. You had to dress up like you're wearing some sort of hazmat suit in order to get this. So I have done those things. However, I was not a farm boy. I grew up in town. My dad worked at the local prison. He got paid for it, not 9 cents an hour. He was a boy. And my mom worked at the local bus company as a secretary. So blue-collar family, come from a blue-collar family. I was the first kid in my entire family, both sides, to attend and graduate college. And it's in political and professional circles, I'm a little shy sometimes to say this, but I am a religious guy too, and I was the first one on both sides to serve a mission for my church. I went to Las Vegas. There was plenty of work to do. I was grateful that's where I was sent. I have a very unique work history that has prepared me to become your county auditor. I have a master's and bachelor's degrees in public policy. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically half political science, half economics. You literally learn how to help form a question in a way that helps the decision makers make the right decision. Now, as you may or may not know, I'm winking, those decision makers that we have their own priorities. And so the first thing that you learn as a budget analyst, which was my first job out of college, was that one of the interview questions is, are you comfortable spending your entire working life working on some analyses of problems and then having the governor completely change his mind on what you did? And I said, absolutely, I'm fine with that. And then guess what? You get to go defend what he wants you to say in front of the legislature. Not an easy job, but guess what? I loved it because I love good government. I'm interested in politics, but not the kind where I have to run. This has been a really interesting experience, to say the least. I view myself more as a public servant than I do a politician at all. But that was my background. So I have a master's and bachelor's in public policy, and then I went to work, and I've served several governors. I've served the governors of Utah in the governor's office of planning and budget, and that is strictly dealing with policies and budgets mostly related to fiscal process, government finance. Then I also happened to marry a California girl. It's okay if you marry one and then get pulled over there, right? Kind of like I didn't choose to live in the People's Republic of California, right? But that was actually my first job out of school. As I went and I worked for Governor Davis. Those of you who are old enough to remember, Governor Davis was recalled. And who replaced him? Do any of you remember? The governor. That's right. And I can prove it because I have a signature on a hat from the Department of Finance with his signature. You really can't read it. It's just really long because Schwarzenegger. 2 N's, 2 G's. Okay. He was really interesting because he was a Republican governor with a 100% Democratic House and Senate. And he worked to try to get compromise, and he did his best, and he stood up for good things. So that's my experience in government. That was my first experience. So I went to Alaska, and when I was there, I actually became the budget director for the Department of Health and Social Services. It's the biggest budget in Alaska, and sadly to say, when you're working in Department of Health and Social Services, you literally just open the back door and watch the taxpayer money just flow out of it. Because it was a highly subsidized health type system. However, in all of those positions, the number one job, I always joke with people when they say, what the heck is a budget analyst? I would say that's when departments come to you and they say, we need our budget for the next year. And you tell them no, and then you negotiate from there. And so that's what I've spent all of my career doing. You bet. I guess to be more succinct as far as who I am, we've lived here in the Valley for 15 years. I'm a father of 6, a grandfather of 4, just barely. And I'll share with you another time how when we went to visit our son recently, I came this close to the Magna Carta. And that started men and women standing up for the rule of law. That's going to be important for me as auditor. VoteDirk.com. Accidentally turned it off.
Well, good evening. I'm Diana Schaefer. I'm going to choose to stand so I don't have to hold that mic. And I'm a Cache Valley native, proud of it. I love the valley. I love my community. I was born here. I raised my family here. And I received my degrees from Utah State University in accounting, business administration, and computer information systems. I'm an ultra fiscal conservative. I'm committed to limited government. I'm dedicated to legal compliance, and I am passionate about government transparency. If you want to know more about that, you can talk to me about the 2024 bill that Chris Wilson and I got passed this year regarding transparency for our people. For the past 15 years, I have been performing duties that are statutorily specific to the office of the county auditor. I'm not a polished politician. I have mixed feelings about being here, but I am experienced at doing the job. And so I offer my services to my community. So the uninitiated may read Utah Code 17A regarding the county auditor's duties and may assume that they involve only financial and auditing services. However, throughout the Utah State Tax Code, there are numerous duties that are assigned to the county auditor. It's safe to say that probably half of the duties that the county auditor is responsible for involve tax administration. I'm the only candidate before you who has tax administration and government accounting experience. So as you consider your candidates for the job, would you hire a candidate with only half of the skill set and half of the experience required to execute that position? I would say that experience matters. So I am running to address problems like fraud, waste, abuse, lack of transparency, legal noncompliance, and budget bloat that have been going on for nearly a decade. Since we lost our old auditor, which was Tamara Stones, who I did serve under for 7 years prior to them combining the office for the first time. So my candidacy is rooted in the desire to resolve these issues and to restore integrity in the financial division of our county and to be able to pass my knowledge on to the next generation, because I will not be a long-term politician, I assure you. But I would like to be able to impart that knowledge to somebody that will stay with the county and carry that forward. It took years of frustrating effort on the part of whistleblowers, staff, and our county council to bring that forensics audit, that 326-page report to fruition. And finally it was released, so we all know about the financial improprieties and the legal noncompliance now. However, this process provided our council a path to implement changes to root out the corruption that they could and to prevent that from happening in the future. Them recreating this separation of the auditor lets the people choose our direction for the future. To elect someone who is going to prioritize honesty and integrity, accountability, efficiency, and compliance with the law. Someone who understands both tax administration and the financial side. Someone who will represent our values of limited government, limited taxation, and spending within our means. I believe we need an auditor who will hold the line with the finances and the legal compliance and will provide total transparency to their council, to this community. If elected, I assure you that I will provide fiscal accountability and I will provide totally transparent reporting. I will strictly adhere to the law and I will continue to meet the gold standard in tax administration. I know what is wrong, I know how to fix it, and I will work hard to get that job done. Thank you.
My name is Matthew Funk. I'm a fourth-generation farmer from Richmond. I'm a certified public accountant with more than 20 years of experience, and I also just retired after 15 years as a justice court judge in Richmond and in Providence. As a certified public accountant, of course, we are conversant in both for-profit accounting and government accounting. Looking at the government accounting in Cache County, we have significant problems. Cache County was audited twice last year. The first by the state auditors. The second was a special investigative audit issued at the direction of the council. Both of those audits found significant concerns. They found to be clear fraud, employees arranging their own raises in one case on the state audit. They found weak internal controls in both audits, poor contract management in both audits, and disturbingly, most disturbingly, I think, in the second audit, they find on page 7 of that audit, paragraphs, the last two paragraphs of the page, they find hundreds of thousands of dollars being spent without council authorization or approval. And that's unconstitutional. More disturbingly, in that audit, though, we find an enforcement of what appears to be a loyalty culture. The last paragraph or two in that audit report discuss how the auditors were approached by members of county administration and were instructed to turn in the names of those employees who had cooperated with the audit and who had reported these misdeeds. That's unacceptable. That is absolutely unacceptable. The effect from these two audits was significant. If you go to YouTube and pull up the Cache County channel and go back and look at the August 8th meeting of the Cache County Council, it happened right here in this room, sitting right there in that chair, hi sir, right there where that gentleman is sitting was a deputy Cache County attorney. And he opined for a few minutes. He got to speak about what was going on. The state was going to pull over $800,000 in state funds because, quite simply, things were a mess up here. They could not tolerate the improprieties that were going on. And as that gentleman pointed out that evening, the state wasn't negotiating. They weren't bargaining. They weren't making an offer. The state's demand was that we clean up our house, and the way the state required that we do that is that we bring back the Cache County Auditor as a singular elected position and make that person the financial officer for the county. In that meeting and in the meeting followed, which I believe is August 20th, August 22nd, you watch that. It takes about 4 hours of your time, but I think you'll see an excellent discussion of what was going on and what needed to be addressed. And the county council took, I think, the right action, firm action, in splitting off the auditor's office. And that's what this is here about, is a split-off auditor's office who only has responsibility for finance and the audit. And as Diana points out, we haven't had that for years, since I think 2012, when Tamara Stones was the last dedicated Cache County auditor. So that's why I'm running. How are we going to fix this? Well, we start in any one number of areas, but I think first and foremost, I want to look at a procurement audit. And that's only the beginning. If you look at specifics, particularly regarding the Children's Justice Center and other concerns raised in the second audit, I think that's where we need to start. And that's where I will start. I am the only outside candidate running for this office. All of my opponents already work for Cache County. I'm the only outsider, and I'm the only one who's not entangled in the problems of the past. I didn't create this problem, but I will take responsibility for fixing it. My name is Matthew Funk, and I'd appreciate your support.
Okay. I'm not as eloquent of a public speaker, but I hope I can get my message across. So a little bit about myself. I'm Brittany Kingston. I work for Cache County in the finance department. I've worked here for about 5 years and have worked my way up from a financial analyst, and I'm now their senior financial analyst. I live in Trenton on my husband's family's dairy farm. I've got 2 small kids. They're age 6 and 11. And I am currently going back to school to get my master's degree in accounting. I'm not afraid of a challenge. Going back to school with children at home is very difficult. And I feel like this position of running for auditor is very difficult. I'm an introvert, and so being in front of so many people is hard and scary. But I love working in teams, and I feel like to be able to move forward, we have to be able to work with our legislative body and all of our department heads. It's going to be a group effort to be able to fix these problems and move forward and to rebuild trust between the county and its constituents and the citizens. I consider myself a citizen, not a politician. You know, and oh, this is so scary. I feel like I can do that. I've worked with the county long enough to build some relationships with department heads, with other elected officials, with our council members, and I feel like I won't have to spend any time developing relationships with those people. I'm already here. I am very happy about the split to make the auditor separate from the clerk. I think most of the people who have run in the past have run for the clerk election side and not really focusing on the audit side, which we desperately need. I view the auditor as somebody who is willing to uphold the policy and kind of enforce and make sure that those policies are being followed, make sure that people are held accountable. Because I've worked here, I know that if, for example, a purchase policy is not followed, what happens now is we just get a stamp on that paper that says policy wasn't followed. There's no audit being done. There's no corrective action plan. There's no repercussions for not following policy, and I want to change that. The other reason I want to run is because I just love the county. I am a transplant. I grew up in West Valley, and I moved here when I was in high school. But I love this valley, and I love this county, and I just want to see it be successful. And I want it to work out. I want there to be transparency. I want people to be confident that the county is running the way that it should, that our taxpayer dollars, my taxpayer dollars, everyone's taxpayer dollars are being spent responsibly. And so I'm putting myself out there to stand up for what I feel I should do. That's all I have.
All right, I have a couple of questions. You guys are thinking of yours, right? Because you're going to be up here in just a minute. So, as alluded to in the opening statements, the county relationships between different departments seems to be a point of stress. And as the new auditor, you are going to be coming into that situation. How do you plan to navigate that and make it work? Diana, we'll start with you. take a couple minutes, like 2 minutes each.
And so, say, how will you navigate the stress in each department, between departments? So, I mean,
Yes and yes.
so having been here for 50,
Stand up, Diana, sorry.
sure, we'll hold the microphone this time. So, having been here for 15 years, I have good working relationships with all of the departments. If they have any tax questions, they send them to me. If I have a good working relationship with my council, the budgets are actually the council's. They set that budget. If they ask for a report, that ought to be presented to them within 24 to 48 hours. So over the past few years, I've heard a lot of comments from constituents that say, you know, it's so acrimonious and they're always fighting in council. Well, there was good reason for that because they were withholding financial information from the council when they provided that. My plan is to first off go to transparency, not the reports that we see now that are actually, you know, downloaded and made more beautiful for presentation, but something that comes straight out of the accounting software. And when we say transparency, we don't want to see something that says Visa bank card. Visa bank card for what? Right? And that's what I want to provide for my council and for anybody in the community that wants to view that. But as far as like the department tension, I'm not experiencing any of that. If you want to throw something at me that's more specific, I'd be glad to address it. But I don't see that as an issue moving forward. Now, when you start telling them no, like Dirk said on budgets, you're like, well, no, we're going to try to get you to cut 2.5% or 5% or whatever the legislative body decides that's going to be. Then we have to work with them to come up with that number. So that could cause some stress, but that's your job. Hold the line.
As I've spoken to voters throughout the county, a common concern that I hear from voters is that they are tired of the discord and the acrimony that they see in county government. And I think referring to what goes on in the county council meetings between different branches of the government, but it is clear that over the last several years there's been a lot of acrimony, a lot of discord, a lot of complaining. Preamble to the Constitution of the United States starts off with, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union." They understood their assignment. And we need to have that unity. Cache Valley for 68 years has gone through good times and bad times. And there have been times when all we have had is our unity and our integrity. And both must travel together hand in hand. Yes, there have been significant contentions between different branches of the government over the last 2 years. The suggestion I keep hearing is, well, let's just tell everybody to be nice and get along. Respectfully, I disagree. These tensions are a natural, if unwelcome, part of tension between the constitutional branches. The way to solve these tensions is through an election or through 2 elections, and let the voters decide how we're going to go. But right now, yes, we're going in circles because half of the rowboat is rowing that direction and half of the rowboat is rowing that direction. And of course, we're just going around and around and around. And yes, 100,000 people in Cache Valley are getting tired of it. How do we address that? Well, by doing our jobs, by following the code, and by being transparent, as has been said, with the voter. But these efforts have been frustrated in the past. Last June, the Cache County Council passed an ordinance requiring that they be given a monthly report showing expenses and that report be certified by the clerk auditor. Now that was 9 months ago. So you would expect, if we were to go look in the archives right now, we should find 9 of those reports. You won't. You'll find 1. And it was turned in about 2 weeks ago. And it was not certified. Transparency is something we have to work for. It's something we work on and aggressively, and that's what I will do. And through transparency to the taxpayer and to the voter, I think we're going to solve this unity problem, and we'll work together.
Okay. I broke it. So sorry. Okay, I'm going to pretend that didn't happen. So the question was, how will we handle the tension? This is a difficult question. But I guess I would just do what I've been doing and just keep working and doing my best to provide documents or reports or the things that have been asked of me. And if I'm the auditor and I'm responsible for getting reports to the council, you bet your bottom dollar I'm going to do my best to get it to them in a timely manner. I agree with Matt. I think transparency will help. But also I feel like communication will help. I think there's been a lot of frustration with the financials or the reports because I think that there's maybe a lack of understanding or a lack of, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not sure what I'm looking for. My mind just went blank. Okay, I'm going to start over. I know. Well, I don't know where I was going with that thought. It's completely gone, so I'm just going to course correct. I just think there's a lot of frustration around what's happening, and I think the more transparent we can be about it, and if we can be effective communicators and we're willing to work with everyone, and maybe have special meetings or meet one-on-one and kind of review things prior to council meetings, maybe it'll go smoother if we can just communicate better with each other and maybe meet one-on-one and discuss, maybe some certain topics or ask questions or, things that maybe are on their minds, questions that people might have that can be answered not in a public meeting for sake of time. And I think, I don't know, I just think being yourself and working together will help navigate through that.
This is a great question. It is literally at the heart of the dysfunction of what's been going on in our county. The answer is that all sides need to respect each other's roles and respect each other and then come to the table and work together. I am, throughout my entire career in government, I've been given responsibilities from starting at staff all the way up through leading a budget office. You have, the word that I like to use, Matt, is one thing that's wonderful about our Constitution and what the Founding Fathers set up is, I call it healthy tension. There's a healthy tension because you need all sides to work together to get good things done. And so we have to have that. I was not in favor originally of splitting the offices because we haven't been forced to do so yet, and it's going to cost our county at least $1 million to do it. However, having this auditor being independent gives you, the people, an independent voice, because that auditor is not beholden to the council, he's not beholden to the county executive. He or she is beholden to the people. That auditor is going to have a very important role in developing reports for not only the council, but also for the citizens to be able to see on a regular basis. Information and data needs to be far more used in our county than it is now. I agree absolutely that the reports that we've been giving the council have been hit a button out of our accounting service, and it gives us just whatever data it produces. That is not good enough at all. And so it's pretty easy to put together reports. And here's the deal. You get the council and the executive to agree on what needs the report to have in it. And then we can see it every month. Throughout my entire career, I've been able to help my leaders and our elected leaders develop these sorts of systems that help good government reign. We have to have more transparency. We also have to have more accountability. Part of the unity will come from requiring the auditor needs to set standards for our budget proposals. And so that whether it's proposed by the council or whether it's proposed by any department, you will know, we all will know why it's being proposed, the benefits that it will give us, but also what county code are we relying on that's requiring us to do this activity? And it gives everyone a reference to go to and see. This county auditor position is going to be vital to bring unity and, honestly, the best information to everyone involved, all the stakeholders. My personality is one of a unifier, but that doesn't mean that I don't know how to have hard discussions and hold people to it, because that's a part of my job that I've had for many years. So we do need to get together, and we need to fix that immediately, but it's got to start from the top down as far as people respecting each other's roles and also allowing the other branches to be part of the discussion. We have to work together. Though we're creating another additional county elected official, that official is going to be very important to be part of the lifting up of the county and getting us some great government processes, and that's what I'm all about.
Okay, my next question is, what does your first week look like? What does your first month look like? What does your long-term plan look like?
Well, as I've already said, I think we need to start with audits of procurement. If you go back and look at the audit meetings, the minutes of the audit meetings, you'll see not long ago when the most recent audited financials were released, one of the council members asked the auditor, is everybody following the procurement policy in the county? And the auditor said, no, actually, no one is. Taking that information in light with the second audit, I think that is our number one place we need to start. We need to be putting things out for competitive bids as the law requires. Apparently, according to the second audit, we've been paying for things that we never have received and, frankly, that we never ordered. So when I look at my first week, my first month, it's going to be to reestablish controls over those finances so that we know that we're not spending taxpayer dollars on things that we never received and we never ordered. Going forward from that, though, I think absolutely this is a collaborative position. That said, you cannot collaborate your way to excellence. I think there are going to be some hard discussions. There are certainly going to be some tensions because we're shifting the financial officer in the county from the executive to the auditor. But I think if we work together, we can work through that and establish those new internal controls, those new policies. And I think the one thing, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't figured this one out yet, is what's the best way to get this information to the voter? The voter's kind of busy. You may have noticed that. The voter's got a lot going on in their lives. They've got kids to feed, they've got jobs, they've got scouts, they've got young women's, they've got to go snowmobiling, your wife wants you to take out the garbage, and she doesn't need to remind you about that every 6 months. You'll get to it. So somehow we've got to find a way to get into that limited attention span and start bringing critical information to the voters. But we'll find a way to do that, and we will get the job done.
This is so scary. Okay. So my first week would be, I would anticipate that I would try to meet with council members. Meet with the council members and see maybe some of their areas of concern and start there. I would love to be able to perform audits in our departments and find out which policies are not being followed. Procurements is one of them, absolutely. But also, as I said before, I know there's not really repercussions for not following those policies. So I would love to work with the council and our legislative body to figure out what we do in the instance that we find policies are not being followed. And so that is what I would dedicate my time to.
I believe, with my experience that I've had in government, that I already know a bunch of the processes and things that we need to get going. First week, you've got to meet with the elected leaders, all of them. That includes your department heads that are elected, but also, I guess, the other department heads aren't elected, but you need to meet with them as well. I'm going to set expectations on the upcoming budget process. Now, all of the state code talks about that budget process starting way back in like August, September. No, we need to begin it with the departments right at the beginning. It's the auditor's job, the finance director's job, who is the auditor, to create the tentative budget along with the county executive. And so that starts with the department heads. We're going to have reports on budget proposals that they are going to propose for their budgets that include very specific lines, and it's going to be a form. It's going to be like a budget change proposal. And you're going to set expectations and go meet with all the department heads. In the first month, I'm going to be able to talk with the council members and with the county executive on various proposals that are going to come from me and from our office on how to improve the transparency, the reporting, and the budget tracking throughout the year. Long term, we've got to, basically it's going to take at least a few years to get some of these processes going. And some of the things where we need people to get used to the idea that they actually have to, the department heads are going to have a little bit more work to do as far as tracking their contracts, making sure that they're staying within the processes and policies that we do have, but also in creating those other policies that help strengthen all of our fiscal processes. What we need in this new auditor is somebody who has done it before as far as led government agencies, and I've done that. And so I'm excited to be able to bring that knowledge and how to work with people and work with our government agencies in helping bring them up, because it's a lot of change that's going to need to occur, and that kind of change takes experience.
So the first week, I've spent the last couple of days, I kind of got the clerk auditor stuff dropped on me. So I kind of know the new position what happens in the first couple of days is that you are touching base with the staff, the team, those people that are going to be helping you accomplish your objectives, finding out what their roles are, what their strengths are, what they feel like our challenges would be. And then, of course, touching base with the council to let them know that the reporting would be going back to exactly how I used to do it when I was on camera. I did the reporting for the council. Instead of line item numbers like they get now, it was divided by departments, divided by the line items, and then there was a transaction detail report that drilled down on every single transaction. So from day one, every transaction that's coming in, which we're talking about procurement or pay the invoice, we want to check it to make sure that it is in line with policy, that it's legally compliant, that it's been authorized by the council out of the line item that they're trying to spend it out of. So that would start with week one, travel into the first month, which is when the council and the community would get their first truly financially transparent report that they have had in years. So, and then over the long term, once all of the nuts and the bolts of the reporting is in place, then I would look towards what do we audit. When, in the past, when I was in town, we would look at things that showed up in the council's forensics audit. Are they satisfied with that, or do they still need to be looked into further on or has the council already fixed a policy or passed an ordinance that we can then follow? So that would be the end of my spiel on that. And going to, I think it's going to come to you.
Okay, enough of my questions. What are your questions? So we have a hand up over there. I'm going to wander around with this microphone so that the video recording will pick it up. And this is a fire marshal disaster right here.
Thank you. This is for Mr. Anderson. As I understand the budget process, the executive reviews the budget, the council approves the budget, correct? The council members are part-time, right? The executive's office is full-time. There's executive, and aren't you the assistant to the executive, basically? So I just want to know how all the budget problems escalated as they did through, and the executive's office never saw it.
Ma'am, do you have a specific on the budget problems you're talking about? That would help me.
The ones that were revealed in the audit.
Which audit?
Both audits.
Okay. Okay. Well, no, because it's really important for everyone to understand. There's a lot of words being thrown out like, whoa, look at all of the fraud. Look at all of the waste. Look at all of the abuse. I invite you to read what they're calling a forensic audit, but it's really an investigative report. Read it with a critical eye. Do that. You voters, you delegates, need to vote and figure out the facts and not be swayed by grand statements of fraud, waste, and abuse. I have been told by my wife and campaign friends to be the positive guy. I have to deliver some bad news tonight. The amount of money that you think has been fraud, wasted, and abused by certain county leaders is less than the amount that was spent on this special investigative report, that it went over budget. Did you know that? This is a perfect example then. The forensic investigative report, the council approved $40,000 to be spent on that. Does anybody know the final cost of that investigative report? $60,000. $40,000 was paid out of the, thank goodness, from federal money. They approved that. $20,000 came from you. Okay? It's important for you to know. Looking with a critical eye, this investigative report is basically a rehash of several of the council's pet peeves from the last 2 years, and it's just a rehash. I invite, especially those of you who feel that I might have some sort of favor to repay to anybody. I work for David Zook. Right now I'm what you might call the vice mayor of the county. He did not hire me alone. He did not hire me alone. 7 council members hired me because they had to approve his appointment. I absolutely tell you that it's always a part of a job like mine that my boss will ask me to do things that I don't 100% want to do or agree with, and then you go do them. But I am looking you in the eyes right now, and I want you to judge me. I want you to feel this from me. Then come talk to me later. Has my county executive ever asked me to do something amoral, immoral, related at all to fraud, waste, or abuse? Never. Never. He never has. So you really need to look at that with a critical eye. I stand 100% for transparency. We need so much more of it. I am so familiar with the reports that will help you, the voter, understand what we're spending our money on. Our county's finances are not that complicated. We're a county. They're not that complicated. And we can get down to any of the issues that are being mentioned in the investigative report. In several places in that report, you can almost see the writer struggling to say, this is what we understand the problem to be. In other words, they were told to include it in the report. This doesn't look good, but there's really no policies that were broken here. Several places of that audit.
1 second.
Please come talk to me about it, because there's a lot that you need to know. Now, were there things we could learn and do better from both of those audits? Absolutely. Absolutely. We can always improve. But it is not about council versus executive. It's not. We need to come together, and the principles of good government, everyone can recognize right off. And we can get behind those. And that's what I stand for.
Okay, is that fixed? All right, I know that you addressed that to Dirk Anderson, but the chair is indicating that we should all respond to that. I think so. So, like I say, this was an excruciating decade for those of us that were on the inside to watch some of this deterioration of the financial transparency. And before they launched, I think we can go back to the fall of 2022 when the council actually called for that or started contracting out for the audit, was after they had asked our financial department for specific financial information and they couldn't get it out of them. They asked for specifically for access to the software. I was asked by a council member to come over and look at the software and run them the reports that they wanted, but they were given absolutely no permissions to do anything in the software. So it was useless. They then hired the forensics auditors who had to go in through the back door, meaning go in through programming code, which was SQL, extract the data, and then identify these problems without help from the departments that should have been helping them, that should have been making it crystal clear. If they asked for that information, it should have been provided to them. And so, like I say, it took a long time for that to happen. And I would have to respectfully disagree with you, Dirk, on the amount of money. So maybe it went over budget and they spent 50. So we have 2 audits, one from the state auditor that's about 30 pages long. You have to go to the state auditor's website to get it, or you can go to my website on the About page, and I have a link. That deals specifically with the audit that was with the attorney's office and where they had a municipal prosecution contract. And they had kind of like interjected themselves in between a county and county government, so they were taking money from another county and providing services and then taking that money and splitting it up as bonuses with certain people. I've been told I'm not supposed to state names because I don't want to slander anybody, and nobody's been charged yet. I've been asked that a lot, why hasn't anybody been charged? But so I say, I saw that first check come into the auditor's department after Tamara had left, and that check was for $12,000, split 4 ways, so 4 individuals getting $4,000. I saw this with my own eyes, and I looked at the attorney and I said, this is highly irregular. To which she went and talked to the finance director, reported me for insubordination to HR, and they carried on. So you say $12,000 4 times a year, quarterly from this particular county, times that by a decade, and you're looking at $500,000, which is a lot more than 50,000. And then as far as the forensics audit, it didn't hit quite that level of money, but fraud, waste, and abuse, or if you want me to use the word embezzlement that ought to be paid back, it's a little too strong. Some people say I shouldn't say that word either. Then you can go to the forensics audit that is on the council's website, so cashcounty.gov under council. Or you can go to my website on the About page. There's a link to that. That's a 426-page audit. Only read the first 30 pages. When you start on page, like 7 through 20, you will see who some of the perpetrators are. Some of them have been removed. One of them is named, most of them are not. But if you look at it now and not in 5 years, you'll be able to know who it is. If you look at it in 5 years, it may implicate someone who had nothing to do with it. That's a really terrible accountant joke.
20 seconds.
And that's all I've got on that. I think that the audits were worth it. I think that much of it has been put into the past by the council, but it's up to us, the people, to choose, what that future is going to hold.
Ma'am, I think you bring out some good points about the things that were going on with the audit, or that the audit found. For example, the state of Utah, looking over the billings that Cache County had submitted on those grants, when they got into it and realized there was no supporting documentation on a lot of this, they required the county to repay the state $76,000. And I just use that as a simple example of something that got caught. Go back to page 7, as Diana has mentioned, of that second audit. And you're going to see $358,000 that was spent that was not authorized on 2021-19, and another, I think it was $107,000 that year. Now, when I ask myself, was that $60,000 worth it? Well, I'll tell you what. You read it, and you be the judge. And why was it so expensive? Well, I'll tell you something. When the auditors show up at 8 a.m. in the morning and need to get access to the computer system, and nobody from finance shows up until 4:15 that afternoon, and the auditors have been sitting, cooling their heels, billing you, the taxpayer, for that time, yeah, of course it went over budget. But we found key information. We found the truth. We found data that we need to know. Now, I respectfully disagree with something that was said earlier, that the county finances are not that complicated. Folks, Cache County has assets of $175 million. We have a net position of $130 million. Now, that's good, although that information is aged. It's 18 months since they've released an update to that. But $175 million and $130 million, that deserves to be treated with the respect it's due. Now, that information, look into those audits, and what you're going to find is you're going to find that our budget is exploding. Last year, the budget increased, the expenses in the county increased 18.1% for county programs. That's $10.9 million of your money. And again, reading that second audit, that money went, some of it went, to stuff we did never get. I do think that it deserves that kind of respect, and I will give it that. Thank you.
Could you remind me of what the question was?
The question was about the recent audits that the county performed on the executive branch, and
how it got by the executives department, because they're full-time, 2 full-timers there looking it over. And the council had to.
so I would answer the question. Maybe I can just add on to it. You're going to be the auditor, right? How do you deal with this situation where you have outside auditors coming in to look at your books? What is your role in that process? I'm interested in that. Does that make any sense?
Oh. Well, I think as auditor, audit and finance should be independent of each other, and I don't know that the auditor should audit finance when you are over those processes, because I don't think you can have an unbiased opinion on how those processes are going if you are the one telling them how the processes should be. So I think with finance being under the auditor, I think we would still need an outside source to audit finance specifically, but we can audit the department heads to make sure the department heads, before those invoices come to finance to be paid, are following the processes, whether it's with procurements and POs and purchase orders, or budgeting policy, making sure that they are following policies to make sure that their budgets are compliant with codes and that they're turning them in a timely manner and they're providing all of the information to the decision makers, which would be our council members, then yes, we need to aid with that and we need to be more transparent and we need to make sure that we are meeting those deadlines and getting the information to our council members as soon as possible so they have time to review the information in the short time, because they are part-time and not full-time, that they have the time that they need to review those.
Perfect, thank you.
So we've talked a lot about the financial aspect of your job, but part of your job is going to be that financial oversight. The other part of your job will be to lead and gain influence among those you work with, because you'll be in an office that's already functioning, correct? Like it already has people, staff, right? And as part of the auditor's responsibilities, and in order to help our county become more productive and less dysfunctional, I'd love to hear more specifically about your leadership philosophy. Because when you go into a situation that has currently been not very functional, it takes leadership skills in order to gain influence, not only among your fellow coworkers, but the people that you're going to be working with in departments. So tell me about your leadership philosophy and how that plays a role in what you will do in your first 30 days, let's say, of your role as auditor.
Want to hand that down to Diana so she can start?
So I think we already had the question is what we were going to do in our first week, and yeah, and what my answer to that was, like, my first week would be spent with staff. Succinctly, my leadership management style is team, because that's how you accomplish things, is with your team. So, like I said, meeting with the team, seeing, reviewing job descriptions and what they're supposed to be doing, having them respond and letting me know what they feel like they're doing, what their strengths are, what their challenges are, what they need me to help with, and suggestions for improving the office, and starting internally first, and then moving out to the other departments as far as the budgeting. Like Dirk said, he would start on that day one, but day one's going to be like the first Monday in January, and the budget's already set for that year in, by the end of December by the council. So I probably wouldn't start budgeting in January. That would be more towards the end of the summer, after we have a good part of the year to base that forecast on. So, but as far as I hear the management philosophy, and I just think team. And when I think of the other departments, like I said, I have a working relationship and rapport with all of the departments that are on the county campus, and even some out at the sheriff's office. So I see all of us as part of a team, and we have our role to play. Like the auditor sometimes has to hold the line and say, well, this is what the law says, this is what the policy says, you can't do that. Maybe put the red stamp on it. They may not like that, but I think that they'll respect that. It's been missing for a while. So did I answer that question for you?
So I was a judge for 15 years, and being a judge has high points. When you're wearing the black robe and you're up there on the bench and you've got a guy standing over there with a gun who's ready to, do anything that you tell him, it's common for judges to get what we call black robe-itis. Suddenly we think that we know everything, and we think we're the smartest guy or girl in the room. My point here is, what I learned on the bench and what I've learned in business is that you've got to go in with humility. Colin Powell, when he took over the State Department for George W. Bush as Secretary of State, he went to the employees on the first day and he said, listen, you need to tell me what I need to know. And if I didn't hear you the first time, tell me again. And if I didn't hear you the second time, keep repeating it until I hear it. This department has gone through, the finance department, has gone through a lot this last 2 years. The finance director is gone. The assistant finance director is gone. They have been tugged and pulled 5 different ways. I think, from what I can see, they're going to need some trauma care. So I think it's going to be a difficult situation. We're going to have to go in and listen, and I think they're going to have to feel that they can trust us, whoever is elected into that position, to have their best interest at heart and not to betray them for an agenda. And that's my specific thought on that.
So my leadership style is more team-oriented as well. I understand the importance of building relationships with people based on. And so when I get to know people, it takes me a while because I'm trying to get to know you and I try to get to know what you do. And so I feel like I have a slight advantage because I do know the finance team and I work with them, and have had a very difficult year. Losing the finance director and the assistant finance director has been a huge blow, both for morale and our workloads have increased significantly. And so trauma care is, as you put it, is essential. We need to make sure we're supporting our staff, and we need to make sure we're understanding what they need. And so, as coming on as auditor, I would also be with tax administration, and I would want to learn how that works and what is needed. And I feel like if I understand that and I can connect with you, then I feel like I can advocate for you and I can help communicate with others what is needed, and we can go from there and we can work together to accomplish what we need to do.
My leadership philosophy is that of a servant leader and also a transformational leader. Those are actually technical terms in the leadership field. I went a little long trying to get to know you earlier in my introduction. So I have a bachelor's and master's in public policy, but I have a PhD in leadership as well. It is so important for us to bring out the best in our people. We have amazing employees in Cache County, and all they need is a leader who's willing to listen and support them and maximize their good. And I kind of believe I've kind of majored in that. My favorite thing about working in the county as the Chief Deputy County Executive has been going out and getting to know the departments and figuring out what they need to succeed, then helping them to get that within all of the constraints and the budgets that we might have. It's been a really hard last 2 years. A lot of what we've dealt with is just seeing how we can best work under the situation that we've had. And I'd say that given the situation, we actually, because of the great people we have and working with them on such a regular basis, we've been able to help them keep going and to do their best. We have got to have just decent people who are willing to do the right thing. But the transparency and the accountability on the finance side is super important. But then you're right, we're also leading people and we're leading teams. And the auditor is such an important leader because they're going to not only be the leader, independent leader for our finances for the whole county, for you citizens, but they're also going to be a collaborator across all of the departments. And you're actually helping lead those department heads as well, because you're sharing with them the policies that they need to be following and that we need to improve. So yeah, leadership is so important. Got one more.
Oh, this is scary. I've heard a lot about transparency, and I am curious, what is your plan of action to provide that transparency? Sorry, can you not hear me?
I missed the first part.
Okay. I've heard a lot about transparency from you, and I want to know what your plan of action to provide that transparency to the voters is, and what your time frame looks like on that being quick or long term.
You want to go ahead. You know, it was 2 weeks ago in this very room, I was talking to a voter, and I said, we need to have transparency. And she said, well, what does that mean? It's just become a throwaway word that everybody uses. And I thought about that for a minute, and I thought, you know, she's right. We all throw it out there like, we're going to be transparent. What does that mean? As I indicated earlier, I think part of the problem is dealing with voters who are so busy with everything else in their lives. I've given a lot of thought to that. Do we set up a special web page for the auditor where we're posting performance audits? I think that very well may be part of it. Do we take a minute during council meeting? Those are pretty tightly programmed, and so I think probably not on that. But or do we go back to the email list that I've been using as I've been emailing delegates? I think there's a lot of ways we can go on this, but yes, we're going to have to sit down, and it's probably going to be a multi-channel process. It might be a YouTube channel. It's certainly going to involve a website. It's certainly going to involve those performance audits, and I think it's certainly going to involve us, me, listening to the voter as I run into them at Arby's or Burger King or wherever, and finding out what's working for them so that we are getting the information that you need and that you want. Because in the final analysis, that's our job as Cache County Auditor, is to report to you. And I've given that a little bit of thought. When you're working with department heads who, frankly, probably don't want some of this information to get out. I get that. It's embarrassing. You know, they don't want people to know that they didn't do this, that, and the other thing right. But you don't answer to them. You answer to the voter. And I think we need to keep that in mind and go from there.
So transparency to me looks like communication. You know, if we can communicate what's happening with the budget and the finances and where we're sitting, presenting those in council meetings, putting them in their media packets, posting them on the website is an excellent idea. You know, anything we can do to communicate what's going on in the county is essential, and getting them out there to the, not just but to the public. And you know, everything we have here is public record, and we should be able to pull all that information for you as requested. And so I would work, you know, I know finance is super overwhelmed right now, and so I don't know how quickly we would be able to set up something, you know, super quickly. I think we have some catching up to do, but that is definitely something that's on my goal list long term.
As I mentioned earlier, we don't want people to work off of their emotions necessarily. So what does that have to do with transparency? The information that you need to get, you need to believe is true. You need to know that it's information that is actually going towards the decisions being made. The answer there is you've got to agree between all branches and all department heads on those reports that go out, because then everyone knows that everyone agrees with what's in that report. It's a plan that involves collaboration and a unification with the whole county leadership, and that's what we need. Honestly, transparency really comes down to the fact that when you get a report from your government, you've got to believe what's in it. You've got to know that it's relevant and factual, and that's really important for all of us to get. Now, Matt, you mentioned you've been sending out emails to delegates. Why am I not getting your emails? I'm a delegate. You know what? That's okay. I'm going to cover you there. I don't think Diana's been getting mine either, so that's okay. Hey, transparency is key, and it can't just be a throwaway word. It has to mean something. Report. We're all going to agree that except for Brittany, and I'm joking, that we need to do more reporting, because she's in the finance office. She's like, if we're going to do that, we got to give, you know? So, but it is important. It's vital. But it can't just be rumor type stuff. It's got to be information that's relevant, factual, and actually adds to the conversation that you know is valid information. It's really important.
Transparency, I love that question. Oh, there are various aspects of transparency. But when it comes to the audit function, I think that we need to look at the transparency of the financial reporting. That is the language that accountants speak, is the numbers. And with those numbers, there needs to be a description of what that money was spent. When I used to send the reports to the council, like I said, it was divided by fund, because you'll have a general fund, you'll have your municipal services fund, and another 20 funds, but within that, then you will have departments. And so then it'll be like, well, here's a summary for you because we want it to be a management report. But then attached to that was always a detail report where they could look at every single line item transaction. So if you want the snapshot, there it is in the summary report. If you want that detail, like I said, nobody should open a report and see bank Visa card. What is that? Like, that is not transparent. Transparency would be like, oh, Visa bank card, the creperie, $24 or whatever that was in the audit report. And you're like, what? And the council would see that and be like, no, that's not true. Or better yet, the auditor would say, that is not an authorized expense. You are going to have to pay that money back that you spent. Then you would see two entries, one where it happened and one where the perpetrator paid it back. So as far as with financial reporting, that's my definition of transparency, is you can see it all. And I have to respectfully disagree once more. I don't think it's a collaboration between people on what ought to get out to the people. I think it's the facts. I think it's the detail of those financials that should be available to everybody across the board, starting from the top down with the council and all the way to our citizens, who, by the way, are footing that bill. And I don't know if I have time, probably just a few seconds. There's other types of transparency, like when they're trying, when your cities are trying to raise your taxes. That's the bill that I worked on with Chris this year, is, well, I wrote it last year, presented it to him, and he sponsored it and carried it all the way through to passing. But that means when you see your truth in taxation notice that says, here's a hearing, in the past, they've been able to say, we're holding the rate. And you're like, well, that sounds revenue neutral. But in reality, they are holding an old rate that was on less value, because you all know the values of your homes have gone up, 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 right? So if you're holding an older rate, which was on a lower value, that means they're actually getting more money. So that bill will make them talk about the increased revenue they're getting. Like, did they go from, 15 million to 16 million, meaning they needed $1 million more? What that effect's going to be on you and what they're going to use it for. And if they don't do that, then they won't get their tax increase. So like I say, there are different aspects of transparency, but at the basis of all of that is truth and information. That's all. So you went first last time, so you're up.
I'm an auditor in another industry, and I find myself asking a question, what will you be auditing to? What standard? How much exists already and how much will be developed by the auditor themselves? In other words, where do you get your, where do you pull your best practices?
Okay. So the first question was, what will we be auditing? And will we be able to do the audits ourselves?
What standard?
What standard? I think so. So what I would like to audit more are the county policies. Last year, the council voted to create a policies manual. Currently, before that, Cache County only had a personnel policies and procedures manual. So them voting to put together a policies manual that not necessarily related to personnel will be the standard. That was the law, that was the rule, that's the policy we have to follow. And then I myself wouldn't be able to. I'm not a certified auditor, so I would need a team under me to support me to perform those audits.
Thank you. That's a great question. That is the big difference between the state audit that we got and all of the state audits we've received. The audits that are performed by our external auditors every year, and then this investigative report that came out. There wasn't an auditing standard. The government, GAFR, is the Government Accounting F&R. Yep, those are the standards right there. Oh, no, I know what they stand for. This is a quiz for you guys to see if you come up with. The federal government and the state government both have accounting standards that we will follow. For the most part, our internal audits that have been financial audits or program audits have been done, we've hired outside firms. And at least in the last 2 years, the lady that we hired produced excellent work. And they helped. They really helped us see. And she was basically comparing the state code, county code, to what we were actually performing. Like, we didn't even own the senior center. That was kind of a problem, things like that. So they've just been really helpful. Even the fleet analysis audit was helpful in, we were insuring cars we didn't have anymore. That's kind of not good. So we're working on those things as well. All of the audits, the internal audits that have been done over the last several years, the council and the departments, we've been working on improving several of those things. And it's just part of this slowly helping the county to make its entire operations more professional. We will get that done through the accounting. I also want to say I'm proposing that many states have a regular round or schedule of sorts where the different departments get audited kind of on a regular rotating basis. And I'm proposing we do that. It just makes total sense. And those audits that we contracted out for, by the way, were excellent product. They were more than 22 pages of what this internal investigative report produced. The rest of the number of pages they're quoting were all just hit a button, produce reports, that sort of thing. So they were good, and we can really get a bang for a buck for that. It's really good.
I apologize. One more to add to that really quickly. Sorry, how much of the auditing will be done by the auditor themselves, and how much of it will be hired out?
It's going to be
Sorry for throwing another question.
mostly hired out. Yeah, because
The auditor themselves will not be doing
correct.
much of the audit.
And the statute completely directs that, because I think they know that you can't always elect a certified auditor.
Did you want me to back around for that, or I'll go? I guess I'll take my turn with the addition of that. So I believe auditing standards are going to be ruled by GASB, which is the Government Accounting Standards Board, and it's either the green yellow book that we'd have to use. Now, the state code, that Title 17 that I referred to before, the auditor can, at their discretion, audit any other, do a financial audit of any other department, but cannot audit themselves. Now, when we talk about performance audits, those can only be performed at the direction of the legislative body, meaning the council, through their process and through their audit committee, would have to call for that performance audit. So the auditor can't arbitrarily decide that. And then your question beyond that was, you said what's, so like I said, back in Tamara's Day, we did those, and I have a fraud, waste, and abuse on the website. So if we get reports from citizens, from employees, then we would do those first. And that's how we did it, was on an as-needed basis, because we are and should be a limited government. We have limited resources. We have to take care of tax administration. We have to take care of our financial duties. But if we get hit with a complaint, then we have to look into it. But as far as like a routine review of every single department, we have to do that as we go through, and maybe not call it an audit, but look at every transaction that's coming to our office from all of the other departments. would be my answer to that is, I'm not going to throw resources at that we don't have. And then once a year, we contract out for what is known as an independent audit. The same firm has been doing it for many years. So I think that it should go out to bid. I also have, I'm going to use another word I probably shouldn't, insider information that those independent reports that we've gotten for the last few years haven't been very independent because the audit tests, when you set up the scope of that audit and decide this is what we're going to test for, as an auditor you would know that they were designed by county personnel, handed to this outside firm. And so if you look at the audit reports, you will find 0 findings. Not very helpful to us to improve processes or to find fraud, waste, and abuse that may have been happening. So, I would put that out for bid. It's as soon, of course, in conjunction with the council saying we probably should throw that out there and get somebody that's going to come in there and surprise us with everything they can find. So.
Diane has answered very well. The Government Accounting Standards Board sets the standards for the financial side. And of course, they were called and are still called Yellow Book and Green Book because back in the days when they were books, they had a yellow cover and a green cover. When you get to the performance audits, though, that's a great question. 2 or 3 county clerks ago, which actually wasn't that long because we've gone through so many of them, one of them did a performance audit and came back and said, hey, my audit revealed that we need to change the name from county executive to the county mayor. What standard were they? I honestly, to this day, still don't know how you audit and come up with that result. But on those performance audits, honestly, I would look to the state auditor. They're going to do a lot of training, and I want to look at what nearby counties are doing also and see what's working well for them.
I got 3 hands up. Do you guys want to keep going? Are you having fun? Or I suppose you can leave at any time, but do you want to keep going? Or should we end it? Are you okay?
Closing statements or 2 minutes?
So can we have a closing statement from each one of them? Can we give them
Just 2, though.
give them 2 minutes each to make their final pitch?
Shortest
and,
one wins. Hey, contact us individually, though.
Yeah, so, it is 8:30. We have a hard stop at 9, and we got some stuff to do, so I think let's bring this to a close. You started, so Diana should take the thing, so we'll go down and then,
And it's
right, 2 minutes.
So first of all, I'd like to say to all of you, thank you, being delegates. I know it's a pain to receive all of the phone calls and the texts and the emails and look at everybody's website and spend your evenings here listening to us talk about county government and exciting things like taxes and accounting. And so I want to thank you for that. And as I said in my opening statement, I think experience matters. I have experience doing both the tax administration, which is extensive, and also the government accounting. I spent my first 7 years doing that for the county. So take that into consideration. I hope you'll vote for excellence through experience.
It's been a long 2 hours. My name is Matthew Funk, and I'd appreciate your support.
I'm just running because I'm very passionate about the county. I really want what's best for the county, and I really, really appreciate you guys coming here because numbers is not for everybody. And so I really hope we answered your questions in ways that gives you guys confidence in who you should vote for.
I've worked for the county for about 2 years, and I came in with really awesome ideas about good government and how to help. I didn't realize kind of what I was walking into, honestly. Sometimes they don't tell you everything in the interview, you know, what you're going to face. However, a part of my personality is optimism and that we can work this out no matter what. And so that's what we need to continue to do. I believe strongly that I'm the leader that can help us do that. And my 15 years of experience in government accounting and budgeting, reviewing and responding, and I have never written my own audit, but I've read a lot of them and had to respond to them and implement programs to answer the findings. That's all points me to, it's just giving me the right opportunity to serve. In my heart, I'm ready to serve and just give my life to helping our county be the best place to live ever. And so please give me your vote. Dirk Anderson for Auditor, votedirk.com. Thanks.